Good morning, everyone. Hopefully, you guys had a great, relaxing weekend. You guys got a little break from work for the week. But yeah, it's Monday, so we're back at it again. But before we start today, I do want to make a few announcements. And this is, remember, I was telling you guys about the Spirit Week. So here's the calendar for the Spirit Week. If you guys send me a picture of you dressing up in these themes, just attach it to one of your homeworks, I'll give you some extra points. So you can earn a total of extra 5 points this week if you participate. And possibly if you do every single day, maybe I'll give you a homework pass. So this is the calendar for the week. So for today, it will be pajama day. Tomorrow will be Christmas in March, so wear some Christmas clothes, wear a Santa hat, do something, do your work in Christmas clothes. Wednesday will be We Love Pets Day, so maybe when we have our Zoom session, you can bring your pet, your dog, your hamsters, your birds, your cats, anything you have, you can bring it and show us through Zoom. On Friday is Teamwork Day, so wear your favorite team shirt or your jersey. And then Friday is Family Selfie Day, so snap a photo with your family. You can upload it to me. And like I said, if you do it for all 5 days, I'll give you maybe a homework pass for next week. And then also try to tag your pictures through our social media at St. Trivius LA. Okay? So for today in the morning, since it is Monday, I think we should just start off. We haven't done it in a few weeks because we haven't been together. But we're just gonna go ahead and meditate or take a deep breath for a minute, 60 seconds today. So we'll do our 60 seconds right now. And then after, we'll just get into the lesson. So for Monday, we'll just take it easy. So here we go with the 60 seconds. All right, so remember at this time, make sure you're comfortable. You can either lay down, take a seat, just relax yourself. And remember, rotate your neck if anything. But we'll start the 60 seconds, and the 60 seconds starts now. And that's time. Open your eyes. Hope you feel better. All right, so last time we met, we talked about the coming of war and how France and Britain were violating these neutrality acts. So remember at the time, France and Britain were fighting, and the U.S. was still trying to make money off this trade. And they were sending merchant ships, but the British were attacking the ships. The French were attacking the ships because they thought they were supplying supplies to everybody else. The British did this thing called the impressment, where they were hijacking these ships and they were capturing American soldiers and making them fight for the British side because they thought that they escaped Britain, which was against the law. So the U.S. decided, and also the U.S. were worried about the pirates that were over here hijacking all their stuff. So that's when they sent over the U.S. Constitution to protect all these merchant ships. So as a punishment, the U.S. decided to pass this thing called the Embargo Act, where they're just not going to trade or send any more goods to all of Europe. Unfortunately, this backfired on them, and it caused the American economy to lose a lot of money, and pretty much everything went as normal with Britain and France. And because of this, Jefferson started to get a lot of heat. People didn't like him anymore, even though he just won the election, and they didn't like what they were seeing. And people started to switch, and the Federalists started to gain some power. So the second thing they did was they took that act away, and they passed the Intercourse Act. And this non-intercourse act, pretty much what it did was it banned trade only with Britain and France. And this was another way to try to punish them. And they said, we will go ahead and trade with whoever decides to stop attacking our ships. And even though they did this, the law was still not successful in the Embargo Act. Because remember, they relied heavily on Britain and France as traders. And by just banning them from trade, it didn't help them. just led to more smuggling, more black markets, and the British and the French were still getting what they needed. So today we are going to talk about another war. We're going to talk about the coming of a war with the Native Americans. It's very similar to the last war we talked about, where we had the Treaty of Ghent, or the Treaty of Greensville, where we got the Northwest Territory, and when we were talking about Little Turtle. Today we were going to talk about this other guy named Tecumseh, and pretty much this guy, he was another Native American who wanted to unite and fight against the Americans. So we'll go ahead and talk about that today. But first, let's go ahead and review. All right, so number one, why did Congress pass the Embargo Act? Congress, they passed the Embargo Act to punish Britain and France, and pretty much they also did this to protect the American merchant ships from being captured by the pirates. Unfortunately, this act was a huge failure because it cost the Americans a lot of money. Jefferson started to lose his popularity, and the Federalists started to gain some power in the U.S. Number two, what were some reasons for the failure of the Embargo Act? Some of the reasons why it failed was because, first, it hurt the Americans, it hurt their economy. Britain and France were still able to get their goods from other places. The black market started open, smugglers started open. So all these things were a huge failure for the Embargo Act. Number two, what was the Non-Intercourse Act? This act was another unpopular act, but this one banned the trade only with Britain, France, and their colonies. And hopefully they decided that this would punish the Britain and France like the Embargo Act was supposed to, but in the end, this act was also not a success. So today what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the Native Americans, Great Britain, and the U.S., and we're going to talk about another little war called the Battle of Tippecanoe. And this was a battle in the northwest lands, and it was about the Native Americans finally standing up to the Americans and trying to unite, but unfortunately, the Americans won again. But we'll go ahead and talk about it today. Here we go. So disagreements between Great Britain and the United States, it went way beyond the Neutrality Act. It actually went in the West, and in the West, the British and Native Americans again clashed with the Americans over this land. So is it my land? Is it your land? Whose land is it? The Native Americans, that's what they're fighting over. So in the early 1800s, Native Americans in the old Northwest Territory, so that territory that we talked about kind of in the middle of the United States, above like where Michigan is, Chicago, Ohio, that territory, the Native Americans continued to lose a lot of their land because all these new settlers, as they were moving west, they started to pour into the region and kicking out all the Native Americans. If you remember, during that last time, the U.S., they had gained this territory in the Treaty of Greenville, but these Indian leaders who had not agreed to the treaty protested that the settlers' arrival was unfair, saying, "This is my land, this is not your land. I never agreed to this treaty, so you can't kick me off." So these Indians were really frustrated, and they all grouped up and decided what to do. In the meantime, Britain, they saw this as an opportunity to slow down the Americans' westward growth because they were also worried if the U.S. is going to get too big. So the British, what they decided to do was the British agents from Canada, they began to give weapons and arm the Native Americans who were in that area. And as soon as the Americans found out that they were going to go ahead and give them guns and supply them with an army, it got out of hand real quick, and the American settlers, they started to get a little worried and fearful because now they're seeing these Native Americans with guns and with the British soldiers in their territory. They were worried about settling, moving in, and they thought a coming of a war was just around the corner, which was. So eventually, these Native Americans, as they were talking, an Indian leader or Native American leader, he emerged, and he seemed that he was a strong and powerful leader. As you see, that's him right there. It's pretty crazy to see a Native American with a gun, but that is him, and that was Tecumseh. And he was a Shawnee chief, and he was really angry that the Native Americans were getting pushed out of land. Not only was he a powerful leader, but he was a brilliant speaker, and he got to get everybody on his side. And he started to go around traveling to these Native Americans, and he was warning them about all the dangers that were going to come if we let these American or white settlers into our land. He had one idea. He believed that the Native Americans, in order to stop the Americans, they had to unite. Just like how the Americans united during the American Revolution, he thought that they should unite as well. So Tecumseh, he hoped that the United Native Americans in the Northwest frontier and in the South and the people in the east of the Mississippi, he thought that if they all came together and had the same vision, that they could take down these Americans and slow down their expansion and still stay on their land that they had. So one thing that he did was he got help from his brother, who was a religious leader, and his name was Prophet. And together they founded this village called Prophetstown, and all their followers were able to come, and this pretty much became like the base for all the Native Americans. And this Prophetstown, it was located near the Wabash and the Tippecanoe rivers. So it was a perfect area for travel, nice little huddle meeting spot for all these Native Americans to come and unite and pretty much fight against the U.S. So as all the Native Americans were starting to gather around and rally up, the governor of the Indian Territory, Henry Harrison, he watched Tecumseh's activities with alarm. So he didn't really think much of it. He just thought that maybe Tecumseh was a different type of Native American and that he had a good idea, but he didn't think anything was going to be a real threat until later on. So Harrison called him one of those uncommon geniuses which sprung up occasionally and overturned the established order. So he thought that if Tecumseh was getting help from the British, then he would be a true threat. But if it was just Tecumseh and his men, he didn't think it was a threat. So he wanted to dig deep. So if Tecumseh was a serious threat, or if Tecumseh was getting support from the British, he would become a serious threat to the American power in the West. So in 1810, Tecumseh, him and Harrison actually met face to face. And the governor told him, you need to follow the Treaty of Greenville that had been signed in 1795 and realize that this is our land and this is not your land. But Tecumseh, upset and still standing strong, he replied, the white people have no right to take away land from the Indians because the Indians had it first. And he also said that just because one chief said that he could sell the land to the white people, it doesn't mean that all the Native Americans agreed to this treaty. So Harrison, he warned Tecumseh that if he did not agree to the treaty, then the U.S. was going to go ahead and take action. And when this happened, Tecumseh was ready for war, and he decided, I'm going to go ahead and travel down south to get more Native Americans on my side. And the Native Americans that he went to go travel down to were the Creek Nation. So when he went down south, he was hoping that he can get more support from his friends. And while he was gone, something terrible happened. So as Tecumseh went down south to go and recruit the Creek Indians, Harrison knew that he was gone, and with the absence of a leader, he decided to raise his army and march and attack the troops or attack the Native Americans at Prophetstown. So fighting broke out, and when Prophet, his brother, ordered the attack on Harrison's camp in 1811, they fought all day. And it was pretty much a toughly fought battle because the Native Americans were all rallied together. They all had British support. They had guns. They had ammunition. And the U.S. still had a strong army, but it wasn't like an easy battle for the Americans to win. So the Indians actually broke through army lines. They won some battles. It was really bloody. They killed a lot of people. But Harrison and the U.S. Army, they stayed calm, cool. They were pretty much just allowing it to play out because they knew they were going to outnumber the Native Americans, and they pretty much drained them. So Harrison's soldiers, they forced Indian warriors finally to retreat, and then they destroyed Tecumseh's village. And when they destroyed Tecumseh's village, it was a horrible because they just burned everything. They burned all the crops, they burned all the houses or the village, they burned everything. And pretty much when you were to look at the land, all you would see was ashes and fire. So when Tecumseh actually found out about this and he returned home, he realized that he had no more town, he had no more village, and he kind of lost all hope. And Tecumseh said that the U.S. even though the U.S. are going to defeated us at Tippecanoe, his dreams of fighting against the U.S. kind of went down the drain. And what happened was Tecumseh decided that he's going to go and flee into Canada and stay with the protection of the British soldiers. So when after when Tecumseh came back, when he realized that his whole village was burned down, he kind of like said, he kind of got his hopes broken down because his brother died. All the Native Americans, his own family, his own village, all his Native Americans were forced to either retreat or they were killed, and he kind of lost all hope. And when that happened, it was pretty much the end of this little revolt, and now it's going to lead to the Americans going ahead and settling into these lands with no worries because all the Native Americans are now defeated and gone. So as a quick review, some of these Native Americans were coming up. They had a leader named Tecumseh. He was one in a million. He was just like Little Turtle, a really strong revolutionary Native American who wanted to stand up and fight against the Americans for kicking them out of their land. Britain saw this as a great opportunity to stop the American expansion, so they started to supply Tecumseh with weapons. Tecumseh, he thought that he wanted to unify all the Native Americans because he thought this was the way to go ahead and defeat the Americans once and for all. Unfortunately, when he was gone to go recruit more people, the Americans from Indiana, led by Governor Harrison, came to attack and they destroyed all the Native American lands. They ruined Tecumseh's home village. They killed and destroyed everything in Prophettsville. And by the time Tecumseh came back, he was devastated and kind of lost all hope on this new Native American revolution. So for homework, I want you to answer these 3 questions. Number 1, why did Great Britain want to help Native Americans along the western frontier? Number 2, who was Tecumseh and what did he want to accomplish? And number 3, what was the Battle of Tippecanoe? You can describe it. Just describe the battle. So that was it for today's lesson. We talked about the Native Americans and how they started to try to revolutionize themselves and go against the Americans with the help of the British soldiers. If you have any questions, let me know. Gladly to help you. And also, don't forget to send me a photo of you guys in your PJs for some extra points. And tomorrow is Christmas Day, so if you send me a picture of you in Christmas gear, you'll get some extra points. And remember, if you do all 5 days, I'll give you a homework pass next week. So if you guys have any questions, I'll see you guys all tomorrow.